everyone, and welcome to our first Women in Law Section Zoom meeting. I'm glad, looks like we have about 30 participants, so I'm glad we have a really good turnout for today. I want to welcome our speaker, Roberta Hudy, who Mallory will introduce after I get done with the general meeting. Roberta is from iPlanGroup, and we are new will leadership, starts the next will year, which begins July 1st, and they're starting planning the upcoming will year. So in the near future, we'll be sending out a survey to gauge people's interest and different programming at events or ideas. Will also has a Facebook page. In its CMBA Women in Law section, so search for that in Facebook and please join. For those who are in a food for thought group, an idea is to meet virtually. I've done that with my food for thought group. And by the way, to introduce myself, I'm Cammie Brower. I'm the co-chair of the Women in Law section this year with Christina Bushnell. Christina Bushnell will be continuing on next will year. And on this Friday, May 8th at 2 o'clock, there will be a Zoom wellness program with Rebecca and Jarrett. If you remember, last year, they did a program for wellness and de-stressing. I think we all need that right now. And everyone loved them, so they'll be doing a free Zoom. And the CMBA sent out a promotional email about that. I think it was yesterday or earlier today. And I just want to mention that Legal Aid is doing some virtual advice clinics. So if you're interested in doing or volunteering for legal aid, go to their website for the Legal Aid Society of Cleveland, and there's information about that, or you can talk to Catherine Donnelly. Melanie, can I see the participants or no? No? Okay, never mind. We are, thanks. We are kicking around the idea of having a social, but be it a virtual social. And so maybe we might do a Survey Monkey or something on that to get people's interest in doing a social. We're thinking about there's a truffle making virtual party that you can have where you order the ingredients, they get delivered to your house, and then we have a big Zoom party, and it's an online, and we go and make truffle. We'll do something like that. And then our next meeting hopefully will be June 3rd, and we're thinking about again doing another Zoom meeting, but look for announcement on that while we confirm the details. And so now I want to kick it to Mallory.
Cammie,
yes.
So since the quarantine, I'm sure most of us have noticed that there's been major stock market fluctuations, which may leave some of us concerned about our private investments, financial and retirement planning. Well, today we have a discussion and learn more about financial well-being with Roberta Hudy, who is the Business Development Director for iPlanGroup. iPlanGroup is a female-led company that empowers self-directed IRA investors to grow tax-advantaged wealth and retirement savings through alternative investments. So Roberta will share with us information on self-directed IRAs today that can be used as an investment tool for individuals as well as small business plans. And she'll also leave time at the end for us to reach out with questions, so feel free to utilize that Q&A box, and I'll be reading her questions at the end of her presentation. So without further ado, I'll pass it off to Roberta.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Mallory, for the introduction. And thank you, everybody, for being here and for joining us today. It's really a kind of an honor here, right, to be part of your first Zoom meeting. I know you haven't met in a couple months, so I hope to keep this interesting and exciting for you, and look forward to your questions at the end of the presentation. This will take about 20 minutes or so to walk you through this. Normally in front of a live audience, I would ask some survey type alternatives, possibly real estate or others. But I'm just going to assume that we've got some people in the room that are investing, and I'm going to assume that some are looking into it, and especially with the changes in our stock market and things in our economy right now, I think these topics could be of interest for those of you that are building retirement accounts and just your wealth in general. So again, I'm Roberta Hudy with iPlanGroup. We are located in Westlake, right here on the west side of Cleveland, so we are local. We are a national company, and we are a self-directed IRA administrator with a custodial responsibility for our clients that are using retirement dollars to invest in alternatives. And of course, it's important that we not only talk about what we do at iPlanGroup, but of course, what we don't do. And as being a group of attorneys, I'm certain that you understand the disclaimer. We are here, of course, for educational purposes only. And it's important that you know that we do not give you any legal, tax, or investment advice. We don't endorse any particular investment. It's very important that you do your due diligence on any investment, as there is risk in investments in general. So be sure that you do the due diligence. Those of you that are experienced in real estate law, you certainly will have an edge, I would think. So again, we do not endorse investments. We don't give you the tax, legal, investment advice, and be sure to do that due diligence. What we're going to cover, basically a little bit about iPlanGroup, self-directed IRA basics, kind of what it is, why now, why you might be interested in self-directed investments, and what accounts can you use? A lot of people, of course, are familiar with IRAs, traditional Roth IRAs, maybe that employer-sponsored plan. For those of you that have the 401k or a former 401k from another employer, we'll talk a little bit about that. And of course, most importantly, how to learn more about us and self-directed IRAs and get started if that's something that makes sense for you. Again, self-directed IRA administrator. We have a custodial responsibility. It is unique. It's important that you understand our role. We are regulated by the IRS and the Department of Labor, and we do a compliance review for any potential investment that one of our clients is going to direct these dollars or retirement dollars into. We really do empower our clients. We give them the resources and the tools to do self-directed IRA investing and grow their investments in a tax-advantaged way. It's pretty outstanding what self-directed IRA investors are able to do in their accounts. And again, the education being key. Certainly can't act on something that you're not aware of. Part of our mission is really to just get the word out and tell people what is possible. Even though there are about $28 trillion in, I should say, in IRAs, including employer-sponsored plans, that's 28 trillion. Only about 160 billion of that is being self-directed in this conversation that I'm talking about. So it's still a little bit of an unknown when you look at it that way. What makes iPlanGroup different? For those of you that are not doing alternative investing, this may not have relevance to you. For those of you that do, a lot of this will be more important than other points. However, dealing with a smaller company, I'm sure you've experienced this, where you have more of a boutique firm or smaller firm, personal client experience. That's what we really have here at iPlanGroup. There are a lot of larger firms out there, financial services firms that do what we do, but a lot of times people kind of get caught in the phone queue or, just kind of in the process, kind of a long line to be served. We have a much more personal experience. We do have same-day processing for our investors that are doing real estate in an auction or a wholesale environment. Understand how critical that can be to get those funds to the table. We are a company built by investors for investors. Our founder and CEO, Jill Banner, is a very accomplished real estate investor, as well as other investments, including angel investing, starting up companies. So the mindset at our company is really a culture of investors internally, so we can understand the needs of our clients much better, including you if you choose to invest with your retirement dollars. So big differences once you are in the space for sure. A simplified fee structure is also important to note because with self-directed IRA investing, especially in real estate, there are expenses and income and different things that are going to be moving in and out, the funds moving in and out of your account. And we don't charge extra for all of that processing. So it's a little clunky, but we handle all of that for you related to your investment with no extra fee. So self-directed, exactly what does that mean? Self-directed simply is an industry term, and all that it means is that you hold your IRA or a portion of your funds with a company like an iPlanGroup. In terms of the contribution limits and the distribution rules and all the tax advantages of an IRA, they're exactly the same. So self-directed, industry term, it's not a specialty account. It just means that you're able to, again, invest into alternatives with a company like iPlanGroup. Investment diversification is really the driver, I think, for self-directed IRA investors. In other words, diversification inside of, the stock market, where you're working with your financial advisor and you calculate or estimate kind of what your risk tolerance is. Self-directed IRA investors are a little bit different. They are comfortable with a particular asset class or something that they're very familiar with, something that they know. And that could be land, that could be other types of property or real estate. Some people do farmland, oil and gas, gold. They're just comfortable. This is what they know. They do it all the time. But now they want to do it in a tax advantaged environment. So that's really why people look at self-directed IRAs, and it is increasing. It is becoming more common. Maybe not to you, but if you're in the real estate circles, even here in Northeast Ohio, a lot of meetup groups, even commercial, I've seen it in the commercial space as well, where people are able to use an IRA to kind of fill the transactional funding or the gap in a real estate investment. And it's what they're comfortable with. They just didn't know they could use it with, or do this, I should say, with a tax advantaged account. Potentially with a Roth IRA, you're growing your investments tax-free. So it's about when you pay the taxes, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. I think the other reason that it is becoming more interesting is when we see the fluctuations in the stock market, like we saw again recently. We've seen it historically, right? It's a little bit cyclical, somewhat predictable, but it is growth inside of your IRA because you can keep it outside of the stock market, keep it in an investment that you know, like a rental property, and you're able to continue to collect that income or grow that investment outside of the stock market. So it's very attractive, and I think that's why we're seeing it growing even more. This is a great example of one of our clients. This is Larry. We know him quite well. He comes into our office, of course, when we're not under quarantine. But Larry's story is very powerful. He retired from Ford, and those of you may remember Ford really, kind of towards the end there, back when he retired. His pension, or the shares that he bought in the pension, were valued at $75 when he, prior to retirement, I should say. So when he retired, they were only worth $3 a share. So it wasn't exactly the happiest day of Larry's life, but he is an extremely optimistic individual and a very hard work ethic. And he just said, well, I guess I got to go back to work. So he did. He was a consultant, and he worked for Johnson Controls in this second employment round, I should say. And he was able to grow another employer-sponsored plan, a 401k, and he got that up to about $200,000. But then he got hit again. So in 2008, when the stock market crashed, this particular employment plan, or 401k, was down to about 60,000. So a little disheartened. Larry had many friends and some people in his family that were doing real estate investments, and he had never done real estate before, but he figured if I can run the operations of a Ford Motor Company or a Johnson Controls, I certainly can do some real estate. So he was introduced to iPlanGroup, and he opened and funded a traditional IRA account, and he started buying real estate. He purchased about 14 properties, some of which he did on a lease option contract, some that he just rented out. He was able to buy those properties at a very low price. And again, in an area demographic that he was familiar with. And he started growing that account from about $360,000 to over $1 million. And he did that in 6 years. Now, this is while he was taking required minimum distributions from that account from anywhere of $70,000 to $80,000. So required minimum distribution is what you have to pay at 70 and a half. Now that's 72 and a half. But that was amazing because he's still growing at an exponential rate while still taking those RMDs. The other really exciting part about Larry's story is that he was able to care for his wife, who was failing in her health, and he was able to care for her at home while he was retired. Didn't have to worry about the money or where that was going to come from. And now, even though he's sold off a lot of those properties out of the IRA, the ones that he currently holds in there, he's going to be able to sell those when the market's high in real estate, and still fairly stable as we speak. But my point is the growth that he's going to get out of those properties, selling those probably at maybe anywhere from 30 to 40% more than what he paid for them. So he's still going to be able to continue to grow that IRA. So instead of stocks, bonds, mutual funds, he chose real estate, took control. IRAs have been around, part of ERISA, the Employee Retirement Income Security Act, back in 1974. I just want to point this out because when the IRAs were enacted as a way for you and I to grow for, funds for retirement, you were able to self-direct, just like I'm talking about today, just most people did not know about it. It wasn't until 1997 that the Roth IRA, and this is the one now that you can start growing that tax-free bucket at 59 and a half when you're eligible to take money out without penalty. So that's when I think in our industry too, we saw a little bit of an influx because people were like, okay, now I can actually do this tax-free. So it's been around for a long time. It's just that people didn't know that you could do it. You really could do it from day one, I should say, of 1974. Why haven't you heard of it before? Well, the financial firms, financial advisors, Wells Fargo, Schwab, of the world, they don't do real estate. They're not ETFs. It's not a quick, one and done electronic transaction. Real estate's clunky. We collect all the paperwork behind it, behind the investment. So the mortgages, the promissory notes, all those things, we review it, and it has to be compliant. So it's not that you can't do it. It's just that they don't do it. This is what we specialize in. So the IRS, again, has provided this tool for you to grow investments in a tax-advantaged way. It's just that you need to have a firm like an iPlanGroup to make sure that your money is safe, that you're compliant, that you're not doing any prohibited transactions or anything that would jeopardize those funds. So that's really why you don't hear about it, because the other firms just simply don't specialize in it. Recent legislation, I'm not going to go into a lot of this. I'm certain that you've heard of the Secure Act. This has been some recent changes in IRAs. One I've touched on about the required minimum distribution on an IRA, a traditional IRA, that used to be at 70 and a half. It is now 72 and a half. The other change that you may have heard of is in the beneficiary IRA. Those are available for self-direction, by the way. You can bring those over. You used to have a lot more time, the beneficiary, to use up those funds, and now it's a 10-year limit. The CARES Act is part of the Stimulus Act that was enacted just at the end of March of this year. This one has some big changes. It's given you, as an IRA holder, a way to access your funds much easier if you needed to access those funds. So the penalties that we normally see, the ability to borrow from the IRA has changed. If these are things you want to learn more about, we do have an article on our website that covers this. So you're welcome to go to iPlanGroup.com, take a look at that, and it'll give you all the details. You can also reach out to me and we can talk about that one-on-one. But things for you to definitely know about. For self-directed IRA investors or savvy investors, I would say that this is not the time that they're looking to take a lot of money out of their IRA anyway. They want to keep it in the tax advantaged account, so they don't want to raid the IRA. But certainly if there's a situation where you need to access funds to save a house or to live, you know, those are definitely things that you want to know about and what you can and cannot do to access that money. Self-directed IRA investments, basically 3 categories that you can invest in: physical property, real estate, whether it's wholesaling, lease option, rental, land contracts. We even see people doing some seller owner finance, very popular in Texas, when people buy land and divide that up. Note investing, you can do that too. There are some people that are flipping notes, the mortgages, just like other people flip property. So distressed properties, distressed notes. This could be timely again for people, and also private lending. So let's say you want to loan money out of your IRA, a little bit more passive investment. You can create a note, a promissory note. It's mortgage backed. Some people do unsecured notes, but normally mortgage backed. And it would be a non-recourse loan. The IRA is not, cannot be any recourse, but the property would be the recourse for the loan. And you can have the interest returned back to your IRA, either tax deferred or tax free. And then entity investing. So into a limited liability company, crowdfunding, startup company, again, something you're comfortable with. This is a space I particularly like. It's a little more passive, and yes, it can be risky, but I always look for startups that are in a growth phase state versus that, you know, early stage. That's where it can be a little bit more comfortable, I think, for investors. So great possibilities. 7 different self-directed IRA accounts that you can actually use to self-direct. One is the traditional IRA, probably most common. Roth IRA is the one that I mentioned already, 1997. That is a particularly powerful account. And at this point, I like to mention a book. You might want to jot it down. It's called The Power of Zero by David McKnight. The Power of Zero, David McKnight. There's a revised edition of that book, 2018. That's the one that I would look for and access. It's a really quick read, but he talks about 3 different buckets of income. One is liquidity, the things we need, obviously the money we need to live on and sustain ourselves, and access. Then there's the second bucket, which is tax deferred. So that would be your traditional IRAs, 401k, so deferred funds. And then he talks about the tax-free bucket. And this is the one where we've seen even in startup companies, Peter Thiel comes to mind, co-founder PayPal. He invested into PayPal with a Roth IRA, sold it to eBay. He's got like, I don't know, I don't have the slide in front of me, but it came to mind. So I think it's about 50 million in his Roth IRA. It's like literally an ATM machine. So that's the tax-free bucket. And you want to be building that bucket over time. Health savings account is also available for self-direction. The only requirement there is a high deductible healthcare plan. This one is the best of both worlds because the contribution is tax deductible. And when you pay for a qualified medical expense, it's a tax-free distribution. And these accounts can be grown for right now healthcare expenses as well as long-term care. Coverdell Education Savings Accounts are also eligible for self-direction. They are not a 529 plan. They are an IRA tool, a specialty account. And this account is great for those of you with children, grandchildren, nieces and nephews. The only requirement here is that the individual has a Social Security number. So it can be established at birth after the Social Security number is established. And anyone can contribute to that account on behalf of the child. So that's different. The other ones, of course, you have to contribute. The account owner has to make that contribution, other than a Roth for a minor, but I'm not going to go into those details. We can talk about that one-on-one. There's also small business plans that you can self-direct. We do these as well. The solo 401k, SEP, or a simple IRA, great for those of you self-employed. Again, you can get much higher contribution limits on those accounts. Prohibited transactions, something to keep in mind. There are some people that are prohibited to your IRA, and you happen to be one of them. And what I mean by that is you cannot self-deal. So anyone ascending in your family tree or descending in your family tree would be prohibited, including yourself. So let's say you purchase a home in your IRA, and it's 100% outright owned by the IRA. So now it's titled in the IRA versus your personal name. And you want to live in it, can't do that. So you would be prohibited. Or you're going to purchase a vacation home and you're going to live in that home 1 month out of 12 months, and then the 11 months you're going to rent it out. Can't do that. That's self-dealing. But anyone across the horizontal on that tree, so brother, sister, cousins, they're not prohibited. This is where we are really helpful with our clients and potential clients that will get on the phone with us one-on-one and say, this is the investment I'm looking to do. Can I structure it? Can I use a portion of my IRA? How does that work? So you definitely want to be aware of what is prohibited. Other prohibited transactions would include any kind of investment that's really a collectible. So things like the antiques, the art, certain coin collections, those kinds of things, precious metals, gold, you can definitely do that. But alcoholic beverages would be another thing. So, like a wine collection, can't buy that with your IRA. And a couple other things. Life insurance and an S corporation, just because of the tax structure there, would be prohibited with your IRA. I always like to, and again, we're doing a very high overview of some concepts that we could probably spend hours on, but it is important to know that the IRAs are a great way to find capital resources that investors sometimes don't have right in the bank, or they can't get conventional funding for whatever reason. You're able to partner your IRA. So let's say you and your spouse each have an IRA. Maybe one's traditional, one's Roth, or both Roth, doesn't matter. You can co-title or co-invest into a single investment. So 50-50, 20-80, however you want to do that. You can also partner your own IRA with cash. So that's different than the scenario of you buying real estate or living in it, but you're partnering. So you wouldn't be able to work on the property physically. Again, that would be sweat equity or self-dealing. But your IRA could purchase a home, let's say 50% titled in the IRA, 50% titled cash, and then you have someone rehab the house at the completion. The profit, everything that you earned on that investment, including the principal, would be divided equally between the IRA and the cash, 50-50. So it's another thing you can do. I've already touched a little bit on the non-recourse lending. You can do loans with an IRA, but again, it would be non-recourse. The only security you would have would be the property itself. So tax advantage choices. This is a good visualization of just giving you a way to remember the tax advantage, let's put it that way. When do you want to pay taxes? A lot of times when I'm in an audience, somebody usually will yell out and say, well, never. And I think most of us would agree with that, but it is the reality, and we're paying taxes. It's just a matter of when. So would you want to pay tax on when you have a little bit of money, or would you want to pay the tax when you, on that growth, when you've grown the account? Even if tax rates were to stay exactly the same, which generally they do not, you would be paying a lot more money when you grow the account versus when you have that seed or that smaller amount of money. This is an example of purchasing a home titled in a traditional IRA. Let's say you purchase the property for $98,000, and just for purposes of the example, you didn't have to do anything to it. You just bought it right. You were able to sell it next week for $198,000. The $100,000 that you just earned, the growth, that's the growth on the IRA. At age 59 and a half, when you're eligible to take that money without penalty out of that account, who's involved? The IRS. You're going to pay tax on that investment. Now, if you do the exact same thing with a Roth IRA, so the house is titled in the Roth IRA, you sell it for the $198,000, you profit $100,000. At 59 and a half, when you're eligible to take that money without penalty, who's involved? No one. Your silent partner, the IRS, is now gone, right? So that $100,000 that you just profited in this particular investment, you will never pay tax on that. That's the power of self-directed IRA investing with a Roth IRA. It's exceptional. So the tax advantage choices, again, that visual, just thinking about the seed, the growth, and when you want to pay taxes. A lot of people say at this point, again, live audience, I'll see people look at me and say, or maybe raise their hand, and I have a potential investment. I'm thinking about buying a property. I didn't know I could do this. How do I start? Or I'll have someone say, oh my gosh, I just put an offer on a piece of property. I want to do this with my IRA. The most important thing is that you have an IRA account opened and established, even if it's funded with a small amount, because you have to have the offer or the property titled in the IRA, even if that's an entity investment. So if you put any earnest money down, it has to be titled correct from the time of the offer. So very, very important. You can always, again, fund with a small amount of money. We have no minimums at iPlanGroup for that. There are some fees involved, which we'll touch on. But again, very important if you're an active investor, or if this makes sense to you and you want to start looking, you want to have that account in place. How do you fund the self-directed IRA? Basically, 3 different ways to do that. Once you open and establish the account at iPlanGroup, that's about a 24 to 48 hour process. You can contribute. So you have that contribution limit of $6,000 or $7,000 annually based on your age. So at age 50 and over, you get that catch-up contribution of $1,000. So that is the contribution limit for both 2019 and 2020. By the way, good time to mention with the Secure Act and also, the CARES Act, they have extended the tax filing deadline to July 15th of 2020. So if you have not made your contribution for 2019, you're able to do that for 19 and 20. That would potentially give you $12,000 or $14,000 to fund the IRA. You can also transfer from an existing IRA. So in-kind transfer, traditional funds to traditional or Roth to Roth, and that would be what we call an in-kind transfer, non-taxable event. And then the rollover of an employer, a former employer sponsored plan. So if you have an old 401k, TSP pension, whatever that might be, SEP or SEP or simple, you would be able to roll that over into a traditional IRA. We've had millions of people laid off across the country, as well as in the state of Ohio. And now those employer plans, once they're laid off, those are available for funding. So that's been an interesting conversation for people that were not able to find funds previously. So 3 ways to do it: contribution, transfer, and rollover. Fees, I'll just touch on just briefly before we open it up here shortly. The application fee is just a one-time application fee, normally $50 for the traditional or Roth, and the specialty accounts just $25. And then the annual administration fee is based on the asset value or the account value. And this is very important. A lot of times fees in an investment account are based, like, it's a percentage, right? So ours are capped. It's not a percentage of the account. It's just a flat fee. They start at $225. And even if you grew an account, for those of you that are great at investing, let's say you took an account and you got it to over $1 million, you would never pay more than $1,000 with iPlanGroup. So that's very important, especially if you are considering other custodians and administrators, and or maybe you have a self-directed IRA. This might be a time to take a look at this and compare. Again, no transaction fees. So all of those daily things that we talk about, paying the expenses related to the investment, income coming back in, compliance reviews, a transaction review. We set up EIN numbers as well, but no fees. You might see a bank fee if you needed to wire something, or an ACH. But again, I can send you more detailed information there. So why use an IRA? Of course, there is some asset protection in an IRA. It lives for 100 years. It can be handed down to your beneficiary through that IRA. It avoids probate. Those of you that work in probate or have experienced that, it's not fun. People that have well, I know that it can be expensive, which is sometimes good for the attorneys, but what is not fun, however, is if your assets have to be distributed, and let's say they are investments. So if you have some real estate in an IRA, it would just be passed to the beneficiary, and then they can own that asset based on that beneficiary position. There is some investment flexibility as well with an IRA. We've touched on that, just being able to invest in what you know. Finding capital resources, huge. People that are looking for a tax-deferred or tax-free advantage, to grow their wealth and really take control. The IRA account is a perfect way to do that. And for those of you that have traditional accounts, or you are a small business owner, that solo 401k, for those that are age 50 and over, in that case, you're the employer and the employee. So you're able to contribute up to $62,000 in that particular account. And a portion of that would be tax deferred. That employer side is always tax deferred. So that can be a great advantage as well. So this is some contact information to reach out to me. That is my email address there, rhudy@iPlanGroup. The promo code applies more to my live events, but if you are looking to get started with iPlanGroup, or you want to, take advantage of something that you're thinking about, we certainly would waive that application fee for you for the month of May. The best way is really to talk with me one-on-one. We spend anywhere from 20, 30 minutes typically, sometimes more, and go into the details to make sure your questions are answered. I hope that has been a good 20 minutes or so, maybe 25, and it's been informative, and I look forward to hearing from you and hearing some questions that we might have right now.
I think we have a couple rolling in.
Great.
I'll read the first one. If contributing to a 401k, can you also contribute to a traditional IRA?
Yes, you can. You can have multiple IRAs, and that's a great question. We have a lot of investors that have Roth, traditional, employer plans. You're just limited to the contribution limits to those accounts, so keep that in mind. But absolutely, you can have multiple accounts.
And what is a solo 401k?
So a solo 401k is an individual employer-sponsored plan. It is for business owners, owner-operated businesses. So in that case, you're an employer, right? Because you're self-employed, so you're the employer and you're the employee. So you're able to set up a plan, and you need plan documents for that. And once you set up those plan documents that establish the plan, then you're able to contribute to the account and grow it just like you would working for another employer. The difference is you're making contributions on both ends of that plan. So you have to have earned income in order to establish one. That's very important. You also have to be that business owner or spouse, or your business partner could also contribute to the plan. But you, of course, have to have the earnings to make the contributions, but the contributions are much, much higher. So it's just like an employer-sponsored plan, except it's for you individually.
Let's see, if someone maxes out their contribution to their 401k, how much could someone contribute to an IRA? Do you have to reduce the amount being contributed to the 401k?
No, you don't have to reduce the amount to the 401k. It's a separate plan. And then the individual, like the Roth or traditional, would be limited to that annual contribution, $6,000 or $7,000, depending on your age.
Let's see, we have another question. In the example with your client, if he experienced problems with his rental properties, such as a loss in rental income or major repairs, couldn't he end up pressed to sell the investment properties in order to satisfy RMD requirements and create a big loss?
So yes, the investment would be, and if I understood it correctly, it could be a loss and not a loss, right? So if he needed to sell the property, because the RMD, yes, you would have to liquidate if you don't have cash in the IRA, the assets, and we have clients that liquidate over time, so they're able to make the RMD. In a lot of cases, however, they're profiting, right? So the profits are going back to the IRA tax deferred, but yes, you would definitely have to meet the RMDs. And again, that's where the experience as the investor comes in as well.
Another question, why would you use a self-directed Roth for real estate if you cannot take advantage of the deductions such as property taxes?
So again, not giving the tax advice. This, again, you want to think of this as a tool. This isn't something that you would say, oh, I'm going to put all my real estate in a Roth IRA. There are, depending on how you're filing your taxes or operating your business, there's, there are a lot of advantages to tax deductions. But in an IRA, you have zero capital gains. You also have tax-free earnings. So you want to think about this as an investment tool. And it's not necessarily for every investment, but it's an investment tool, right? And it's hard for me to answer these without going back and forth a little bit, but there's advantages in both cases. You have to weigh those out, is my point. A tax-free bucket at 59.5, when you're eligible to take it out without penalty, it's tax-free, right? So if you're growing that, that's the goal. It's a combination.
Okay, great. One more, does iPlanGroup provide any advice on investment opportunities, or do they just provide the vehicle to hold the investments?
We do provide the vehicle to hold the investment. With that being said, we do a lot of educational events, and normally when we're not under quarantine, like this one today would be, of course, face-to-face, and you would be in a room with other people that you're networking with. One of the things we do, and we have more events coming up, we work with different experts in different industries. We recently did one with a private company that's in a growth phase, that we invited our clients to that private event, and we post those on our website as well as social media. But we introduce people to the concepts, and then we bring the experts in. So there are ways to connect to educators, investment sponsors, as well as, well, we do live events across the country called Protect Wealth. We invite our clients to that. We should be traveling hopefully by the third quarter of this year. But again, a great way to network and to educate. So I highly encourage that you do connect with us, and we can talk more about that one-on-one as well. We have local opportunities that we come in as the educator, and then we bring in other panelists, including real estate attorneys as well, and advisors that can answer more specific questions. So the networking education is a great way to get introduced.
What are the contribution limits on the solo 401k?
That depends on your age. I can send that to you individually if you email me, but it is up to 62,000, and I apologize, I don't have it memorized. It's on the employer and the employee side. I could look that up if there's more questions, or just reach out to me. I do know that in total, it's at 62,000 age 50 and over, and I think under 50 and over, it is 56,000. It's huge. It's a huge difference. But again, part of it's coming on the employer side and the other part on the employee. There's just a breakdown for it. It's on our website too under forums, so you can go to that.
If anybody has any other questions, feel free to submit them. Oh, we have another one. Can the solo 401k be a Roth?
Yes, just on the employee side. So it can have a Roth component, absolutely.
Right now, there are no other questions. Give it a minute to see if anybody has any others before we wrap up.
And Mallory, I can have you share my contact information as well. I know people may be taking it down now, but I'd be happy to give a little summary that you can send out to your group from the meeting.
Yeah, that would be great. I'd be happy to forward that along.
Thank you.
I think that's all the questions we have. Cammie, did you have anything that you wanted to wrap up?
Hey, no, I just wanted to thank Roberta again and thank everyone for joining us today and participating. We got, now I saw we grew to 42 participants, so I'm really excited about that.
So glad everybody came. I wish I could see all your smiling faces. So thank you for joining us. Or having me, I should say, join you.
All right, and if you have any other questions, just feel free to email Roberta. Her email is right there on the screen. But it looks like we got through most of them. There might have been one or two that came in, but feel free to just, if that's okay, Roberta, just email you directly with your questions.
Sure.
All right.
Great.
Thank you.